I'm Katie Atwell, co-host of the EduGals podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
This is very Star Warsy, isn't it, my friend?
Yeah, it is. For those just
Welcome
listening, some stuff happened. That's all you need
to the High Tech Podcast, where Will is in a new world.
Yeah.
This is not my real world, just my temporary world.
Yeah, and he apparently has a lot of lights that he has control over in this world.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
I am traveling. I am in a corner. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Listener, you have no idea, but it looks very corner-like.
You
We
could
are
have an idea
here.
if you went to YouTube.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, do that.
Just a little
Oh, gosh,
plug. Yeah.
Josh, you got it. You're the
Like,
one.
yeah. Come on.
Who
Yeah.
knows this stuff? I'm here. I'm Will. I'm Illingworth. This is Josh. He's Swartz. Both of us are
Yeah.
here.
Welcome. We're starting a new trend. This is how you say people's name on the High Tech Podcast. You say their first name and then say their last name like it's also a first name.
Exactly.
You know?
There's four of us here, you know?
Yeah. It's a new thing. It's great.
Yeah.
Totally great.
What the heck are we even doing, Josh? We're here for episode 105. And not only here for our 105th episode, we're starting a 5-episode series. What's this series called?
It is called Opening AI. Woo! You see what we did there?
Wait, we're back to that? We're back to that?
That was a joke. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we are doing a series on AI. If you've been living in a cave, maybe you haven't heard of AI, but other than that, most of everybody listening has probably heard of AI.
I'm pretty sure the Amish have heard of AI, so...
Yeah. They have their own version. It's just a guy like walking around with them that they've named AI. Like,
his name is Al. It's just like upper letters Al, you know.
Yeah, Chat Al. Chat Al is their version.
Short for Alamus probably, or Albert.
Yeah,
Alberto.
Anyway,
something like that.
So yeah, we're doing a series on AI called Opening AI, because we thought that'd be funny to call it that. Yeah, so we've talked about AI. This is not the first time we talked about AI. Back in episode 86, which is crazy. That was the last time we talked about it. That was, whew,
that was like a month ago. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, it released in January.
All the episodes between then and now have been done by ChatGPT for us. Dolly did the other half of.
We're not actually in this episode.
I'm actually making a point, though, already. One of our things that we want to do with this series, we're going to hear from some experts, we're going to hear from some products in this space, but we want to make this conversation, this very difficult thing with lots of language, lots of terms, easier to understand. So we talk about ChatGPT, we talk about Dolly, we talk about Midjourney Whisper, we talk about OpenAI, right? There's so much language happening in all this stuff, and frankly, you need to go ask ChatGPT to understand any of it. Even GPT, right? It means, let me go right to my notes, generative pre-trained transformer. Like, if anybody said that to you, you would have no idea what this stuff is doing. Yeah. But we have this nice, easy little 2-letter phrase that we're using to capture all of it. AI. And there's so much we need to understand about this, and it will help us, I think, address the conversation better. But that's what we're doing. We want to open up AI. We want to look under the hood, make things as easy as we can for you and for ourselves to understand, because there are definitely days I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I think this series serves two purposes, right? It's to the reality is AI is going to be and will be impacting education. So those of you listening to the podcast, we talk about ed tech all the time. AI is already transforming certain ways we use technology in education. Will and I think it's harder now to find an app that doesn't have some kind of AI plugin that's in beta that you can use. And two, when the apocalypse happens, this series of episodes will prepare you for how to survive. You know, like that's our thought. Like It's serving two purposes.
The
you know?
AI apocalypse survival guide.
Yeah. Be a better
High-tech
teacher
podcast.
and don't be whatever the main character's name was from Terminator that died a lot. I think it's completely lost me. I'm not talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was the Terminator.
No, the kid, the guy's name. I think it's John something.
John.
We'll have to ask. No, he would have survived, and Terminator would have lost.
But yeah, that's our hope for the series. We want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to have a handful of people coming on who sell AI products, but they're in education and they're here to talk about it and super excited about what they're doing. And a couple others who are just experts in their opinions about AI, how it works, how it's going to impact education. But for this episode, we wanted to kind of just take a step back before we get too deep into the craziness and make sure we're all on the same page about what we mean by AI, what we mean by ChatGPT, get some of our terminology right, things like that. If you're curious, an earlier version of this conversation, like I said, you can go back to episode 86, where Will and I talk a little bit more generally about everything when it first came out. But honestly, half the stuff Will and I said in that episode is out of date already. So this is probably a better place to start as I'm thinking out loud. But our idea here is to just kind of give an introduction, right? Where do things stand? What are kind of our initial thoughts? And I think Will and I want to share a little bit too, like what our hope is for the next several episodes as we're looking at AI.
Yeah.
So, that's where we're going. That's where we're starting.
One of the interesting parts about AI, we're going to start in my opinion, we're going to start very broad. We'll see if Josh agrees or not. But hey, this is what we do. We don't plan.
It was one rainy day on November 2012. Will saw. No, just.
What was I doing in 2012? I was in college. Who knows?
Yeah.
AI is in a lot more than you expect, right? So right now, everything's blowing up because in October of 2022, a company called OpenAI released a product called ChatGPT, right? So right off the bat, let's not get confused with the fact that AI is a concept called artificial intelligence, and there are layers and levels and stages. There are philosophers and PhDs and scientists who have started to already codify what artificial intelligence is and what it looks like from, let's say, baby form to like Terminator level, going to take over the world. There's lots of information in between. A good friend of mine from work, actually, Joe Lyle, great guy, gave me some of this initial information and pointed me to some articles that helped me understand this while ChatGPT was happening. And just to kind of make me a little more comfortable with the fact that like AI is already here and has been. It just doesn't look like this new stuff, right? So my car already has artificial intelligence in it. My car has a feature where it will automatically deploy the emergency brake based on proximity to perceived objects. That is AI. And artificial intelligence has a little sensor system inside the computer of my car, and it will act on my behalf without my effort. That is artificial
and
intelligence.
My car has windshield wipers, so basically the same thing.
Do either of your cars have the little lights on the sides that, like, if a car is coming up on you, like get a little light?
No. Mine has wheels.
Maybe you need to buy a 2017.
And a door and a thing I think is a steering wheel that works most of the time. Those are the categories I got. Anyway, Will's car has AI.
even those little lights on car sides these days, like they're all in a lot of the modern rearview mirrors, right? Like as a car is coming up on your flank, those things light up. It's predicting something's in that space. It's giving you information. Just simple examples of AI, right? We already have had Siri and Google Assistant for quite some time. Those are examples of AI. Your computer, the ability of your computer to like even predict and understand the time zone you're in based on your IP address and features inside the physical software of your device. Yeah. Those are examples, right? They are tools, they're computers acting on our behalf. Yeah. So for some folks, they're getting freaked out right now, like, oh my gosh, ChatGPT, AI, it's going to take over the world. Well, bad news, it's been taking over the world. It's not new.
If you're scared, it's been there for a while. Now, and I will say, like, just to jump on that train, I give examples. So, like, Will and I have taught about ChatGPT and AI in different places. Still being in higher ed and where I am, I've now led a couple sessions on AI to try to help professors not panic. I'm not sure how successful I was at that. But like the other example I give is like any algorithm stuff that we've got on like YouTube or even like pre-generated stuff on Spotify. I use playlists and stuff. That's a form of AI. Like when you're having that thing basically look at your history, do all that type of stuff, and then predict and create playlists and information. That's a version of AI. Autofilling that you've been seeing in your emails within the last couple of years that seems to be much better than it used to be. That is a perfect example of early AI. Now, some of the more, techie programmer types that actually do this work, which Will and I are not experts on programming AI, might go, well, Josh, that's not exactly, whatever. Okay. It's AI. So like,
it is predictive text though. Yes, it's responding based on language models.
It's responding based on language models and certain things. Now it's not anywhere near as complex and, has the ability to do the amount of stuff that like ChatGPT and language models do now, right? So like we've mentioned this a couple times. Let's explain what we talk about. So if you're still not familiar with some of the terms that are being used, Will and I keep mentioning this term called language model, right? So this is the other thing that I think has kind of jumped very quickly and is why we're seeing a lot more AI than it used to be, right? So
yes.
The way that they do these language models, which are essentially, right, they get a whole bunch of data, information in there. This is the simplistic version. Anybody who actually knows how this works, don't worry. We're hopefully having an expert on later on OpenAI that will do a much better job of cleaning this up. But essentially, a ton of data, a ton of stuff, and then what generative language model, which is what we often reference here in term, is basically it looks at prompts, things that you give, and then looks at all its data source, all its information, and generates text, information, language off of the information that it has and the thing that you asked it to do. Right. And so that's at the simplest level. That's what a language model is, right? They have a whole bunch of models of language and information that they're basing responses on. And they're just kind of regenerating text based on those models that they've been provided. Right.
Yeah. In a practical example, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, like people who are using these tools or creating these tools took as many poems as they could, and I'm not talking 100, I'm talking 200. I'm not saying what they could get their hands on. They used data scrubbing and data intaking techniques, I don't know, to get as many poems as they possibly could. Hundreds of that, maybe millions of poems. And so the language model has access to those poems. And when you tell the language model, write me a poem in the style of Robert Frost, it goes and reads but analyzes all of Robert Frost's poems and then writes one like it. So it's not ever even making you a poem to sound like Robert Frost. It's taking words from Robert Frost's poetry and making a new, or at least a synthesized poem from it. It's a lot like what college students do when you tell them to summarize a paper, right? They just take the same words out, put them in a different order, and call it a day. Now, it is more complex than that. It can do more than that, right? But it also is a big part of all this, and it's maybe not this part of the conversation. It's definitely going to be a part of the opening AI series. What you ask the ChatGPT or the large language model to do is more important almost than what it's capable of doing. If I just tell it to write me a poem in Robert Frost's voice, it's going to do pretty much just what I just said. If you tell it to write you a haiku in Robert Frost's voice, now it has to do a lot more work, and it's going to change things up a bit. But that the prompt you give it is almost as difficult as the work that goes into making the stuff in the back end, what's actually happening. It's really hard to use these things effectively and to get it to generate content that isn't just plagiarism. Like almost all of it's plagiarism, but like to actually get something novel out of it takes a lot of work.
The hot topic. We didn't make this a topic during the series. We should just add it as addendum. Like, is AI plagiarism? That's a big conversation. Like that's actually, there's a lot of debate going on about that, but let's put that aside for right now. And just, that's
we wrote
the point.
It down,
like,
folks.
the language models, which is the popular things that you're seeing. There's a lot of different AI things. And we'll break those down here in a second. But the biggest ones we're talking about, ChatGPT, the one that people know most often, Google's version that like one of my coworkers has beta access to, Bard. And actually Bard is more public now. He has access to like their integrated version with Google. They're doing all the same thing. They've been trained on a ton of information, a ton of written text. Now they haven't been trained on stuff behind paywalls and private information. Like they're not like breaching your computer and finding every
they're not using your emails.
Yeah, they're not using your emails. But they found all that whatever. But they're using all the public stuff. They're using the poems, they're using the information, they're using all of that stuff. And then that language model is able to very quickly look at all of that information, use those as models for then generating, and this is where the generating part comes from, generating new sentences. It is not, looking in this Robert Frost example, it's not literally going, here's Robert Frost's poem, I found, the first stanza. That's a thing, right? I didn't. Yep. So drops, it doesn't go, found the first stanza, drops that in. Okay. And then it's like, here it is. No, it looks at the writing structure, the words used, and then regenerates something that is similar to what Robert Frost would have done. So like a good example would have been when my coworker and I, we were trying to get ready for a session. We wanted to show an example. So we asked it to give us some information about an author who was writing on the importance of like critical reading, right? And so it generated a quote unquote, quote, that was a horrible way to say that, but quote from the book, like a paraphrase that sounded like the author. Like the coworker I was working with really knew the book well, and they were like, this sounds like the author, but I can't figure out where they would have said this. So we were doing some digging, right? And all it did was it found writings by that author on blog posts and any public book area that had been trained on, and rewrote what we wanted to hear in that author's voice. Like, and it sounded a lot like them. Here's the thing. That author never said that exact sentence. That was a paraphrase of ideas and concepts that author had talked about in different writings and resources, and pulled it together. So this is what ChatGPT is doing. This is what some of these language models are doing. And this is why the question I always get asked by people is, why do we care so much about this now if this has been around for a little while? It's because, let's put it this way. Generative language models and AI up until November 2022, okay, they were like my niece, okay? They could say they could say no. They could, maybe put together some words.
Food.
They were a little better than my niece. They could put together sentences, but they had no way of making them coherent. They all sounded like that guy that was sending you the email saying, I'm an Arabian prince and my money is locked up.
Or going back to like the Smarter Child days of AI, of like AOL Instant Messenger's AI Smarter Child. Like I remember getting that thing down certain like conversational circuits where it would just end. You'd try and ask it a question, you'd get so far down its predicted sentence responses that it would go back to a response that it already sent you, or be like, I'm sorry, you've exhausted everything I know. That, I mean, it would literally say that. And so like what happened with OpenAI's, right? That's the company, OpenAI's ChatGPT, is they released a product, a tool that could defeat that could always have an answer, right? As long as you,
whether it's right or wrong, it always has an answer. Yeah. The limits, the scenarios and abilities that it has to kind of just generate, that's the big difference. Like original AI was more of sending default responses it knew, or was generating smaller sentences or text or information, but it was not live immediately doing what it's doing now. I mean, there were some early models before we all got access to it in 2022. That's not new. And like, remember, Siri's responding to you in interesting ways.
Well, we're at ChatGPT 4, and 3 was like the big release. So there's a 2 and a 1 before that, and plenty of betas. Like, this is not new, but it's now popular.
But think about 2 years ago when you asked Siri something, you could very quickly get Siri to just like repeat itself or say, I don't know. Or barely be able to pronounce your name sometimes. Like ChatGPT is at a different level. And honestly is at a different level now than it was back in November. There's AI developments happening that are very crazy and stuff that we're seeing happening. So anyway,
it's rapid.
This is the rapid background of what AI is doing. and we're seeing in the language model areas. Now, real quick, I want to, or go ahead, Will.
No, I've got a tangent. It's like the
You got
next
a
step.
tangent.
So
Okay, so
Yeah.
real quick though, I do want to mention there are other AI things. Okay, so it's not just language models. So I do want to
Yep.
get that down here real quick. So for a while there has been more AI stuff happening in video and image creation, right? So AI is becoming much more popular in special effects and video editing and photo creation, right? Will knows I follow a group, Corridor Crew. They'll never actually listen to this episode, but if they did, I have no interest in creating movies, but I find them to be hilarious. So I
Yes.
watch them constantly. They've been using AI to like generate voices and generate, like, we call them deep fakes, but essentially like generate faces on each other in Discord calls. Like, they've
Go to
been using
YouTube and
AI
look
to
up the
reproduce
real
stuff.
Keanu Reeves. Somebody just
Yes.
deep fakes Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, and that's actually them. In case you're curious.
That's Corridor Crew?
Yeah, that's Corridor Crew, man.
I didn't know that.
So
I thought it was a rando.
Anyway, no, it's them. They did that. That's hilarious. You didn't know that. Anyway, so like that's been happening. Photo generation. We're now even seeing music generation happening, where people are like Michael Jackson singing, I don't know, a Beach Boys song, whatever, like they sound super creepy, but it's happening. Like there's AI generation. And some of those tools you'll hear mentioned, we don't have to go into a bunch of them, but you'll hear tools like Whisper, Midjourney is a tool that's more in photo generation. Dolly E is, I think is how you pronounce it, or Doll-E or whatever.
Dolly.
That's another, that's another tool that's involved. Jasper is another AI tool that's more similar to ChatGPT. The point is, AI is being used to generate content, both written and visual, in ways that it's never been able to do before. And it's quite frankly changing both education and other business realms. Like marketing is completely different. It's being transformed now by AI. Photo generation, visual effects is being transformed by AI. We are seeing AI pop up everywhere. So this is going to end up becoming a reality of our lives that we need to understand how to deal with.
And here's a little more of the history, as far as I understand it, and what we can do, what's happening right now. OpenAI released ChatGPT as an open source tool. It's something that people can get out there and get their own version of it and plug and play it into their tool. That's why you are now seeing almost every single other company come out with its AI plugin. This is not a bad thing, right? But one of the things you kind of just have to keep in mind is like, oh my gosh, look, McDonald's is selling AI now. Okay, what?
Okay, that would be a problem. If McDonald's is selling AI, run the opposite direction. I don't know what they're doing with it, but it can't be good.
That means that they went to OpenAI's open source, GitHub or repository and got out ChatGPT and they've skinned it for themselves and put it in. It's not a bad thing. That, or there are plenty of APIs. APIs are integrations between platforms where folks are just like making their own front end of something and putting APIs in the back end to call on ChatGPT. Why people are doing that is because ChatGPT does take effort to use it. Like we've mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I still don't think we're going to get into as deep a context as we need to, but like writing the correct prompt to get something useful out of ChatGPT is difficult. And so you're going to hear in a couple episodes from a platform called My School AI. We had a great conversation with Steve and Harry. Looking forward to you all hearing it, where they've made a product that can simplify creating learning tools, right? So a simple one, lesson plans, right? You could right now go to ChatGPT and talk it through 15 layers of prompting to get it to give you a useful lesson plan. Or you can go to My School AI and use their tool, and that's not the only tool that they're offering. That's not the only thing they're doing. Listen to that episode. It's really awesome about what they're trying to do to help get involved in the teaching process and the learning process. But on this point of the lesson plan, you can go to My School AI and use their lesson plan tool and just tell it, I need a lesson plan on Abraham Lincoln for, 6th grade history class. Boom. It will give you that, and that's all you have to tell it. Whereas if you went to ChatGPT, you'd have to tell it what a lesson plan is. You'd have to give it resources to say like what types of lesson plans you want. You'd have to tell it all the information about whether or not you want active engagement. Do you want the students to speak? Do you want the students to create? Like, you have to give it all the parameters that, frankly, you may as well have just written the lesson plan. By the time you've given ChatGPT all the things to give it a chance to give you something useful, you've wasted enough time. You could have written the lesson plan. Where someone like My School AI is showing up and doing all of the work to set up the parameters on the back end, where you can tell it, give me a lesson plan for this grade for this topic, and it can shoot that out because they've put in the work to refine the large language model on the back end. That is what's going to happen. That is happening. That's going to continue to happen. Notion is using an AI tool. I really doubt they wrote their own, right? I suspect they're using OpenAI's. I don't know, Josh. You can, and they
don't lie about
it.
That. They're using OpenAI. Yeah,
and this isn't stealing. This isn't bad, folks. They're using open source software, open source code to make their products better. This is a good thing. This is what we want people to be doing. And what I think is really exciting about this is people are going to push the envelope. Some people are going to make money on some things that maybe they shouldn't. Some people are going to find ways to make money that didn't exist. People are going to find ways to help people that weren't previously possible. Something that's really stood out to me, though, in the AI moment that we're in with ChatGPT ablaze, is that in the game of Japanese Go, there's a phrase, which I'll paraphrase, that you should lose your first 1,000 games as quickly as possible. And the purpose behind that is, in losing 1,000 games of Go, you've learned to play Go. You've spent time doing it. You've found the wrong ways to play. You've lost as quickly as possible, because a game of Go can take 3 or 4 hours. Where I think that transfers to ChatGPT is, what we've already gone from ChatGPT 3 to 3.5 to 4 since November, and we're going to get more ahead of us, but we still don't even know what's going to be illegal in a year's time. I mean, there's going to be things about AI that will be illegal. There are already some things that are illegal. We also don't know what's going to be scientifically learned because of AI in 5 years. Maybe we'll have found cures to some of the world's biggest issues like cancer and dementia with the assistance of AI in the next 10 years.
Or invented a lightsaber. You know, like...
Frankly, if Corridor Crew is not using ChatGPT to make their lightsabers even better, or Hacksmith Industries, sorry, wrong plug. Hacksmith Industries, if they're not making lightsabers better with AI, like, come on. I just think that that's really the next big part of this, right? Once we start to understand what's happening, what the tools are, what the terms are, right? Then the next thing is like, what do we need to expect from this? We're going to continue to see more products. We're going to start to see people get hurt. We're going to see some successes. We're going to see some big flops, right? But we need to lose quicker. We need to try faster. We need to do more, because the sooner we can get through the first big... I mean, I'm just imagining, like, maybe one of the first big ones is like some bank is going to release 1,000 users' passwords or something by accident because they use ChatGPT. Like, we need stuff like that to happen so that we can... I don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen.
I think I could push back and say, or we could just, figure out how to not do that before,
right,
you know?
Right. Some of us are working on it.
A few ideas. Don't worry, Will's not in charge of any banks, folks. So I think we're...
That's my take. That's my take as we're dealing with this moment. We're going to see more mistakes, and frankly, we just need to get through them. We can't. We should ask ChatGPT to predict the mistakes we're going to make, and then we don't have to make them.
That's dangerous. I've asked it to predict things, and it doesn't do well. We're in a wild west of this still, and we're going to be for a little while. And Will's right. There's lawsuits already specifically about like photo generation. There's 2 really giant lawsuits about people's artwork that was used in AI, and they're questioning whether that's allowed to be used or not. So there's developments happening all over the place across AI. And I will say we're hoping during this series too to kind of post some more stuff on our social media platforms to help point you to some resources. Will and I look at stuff about AI. We use it. I use it. So we're going to try to keep you informed throughout the series. yeah, I think my biggest plug to kind of hold in for the rest of the opening AI series for this, I'll just say this. If you're an educator, the reality is AI is here and it can assist you in many ways. But it's also important to understand how it works, how it can be used well, how it can't be used well, how it falls apart in some areas, because you have a dual responsibility. We have a dual responsibility of both understanding how to use it and leveraging it well, but also helping prepare our students for how to use this and leverage it well, right? I remember doing a focus group that actually Justin, who's been on the podcast a couple times, organized it and then bailed. So if you're listening, Justin, he like couldn't be there, so I had to help run the focus group. But it was interesting. We asked a handful of our students, like, what would you want the school to talk about with AI? What are your questions? What are your concerns? Things like that. And yeah, we had some people who were like, oh, I love using it for everything. And I definitely totally haven't cheated at all. That's for sure. And then we had but we had a lot more responses that were like, they just aren't sure how to use it. Like they're curious about how to use it well. And they've tried it for things, right? And like, there's interesting stuff, but like we had a couple marketing students who were like, I've played around with it, but I really want to know from somebody in the field, like how this could be used well in that field. Education students were saying the same thing about like, how do I use, I can play around with it. I can write prompts, but like Will's talking about, and we'll talk about a little bit in the series, like the big thing is like writing prompts for AI is not as simple as people think it is. There's a reason AI is not giving you what you want most of the time. It's because your prompt kind of sucks. So like
which they should be familiar from Google already, right? Like Google takes some effort these days if you want to get good content from it, because it's got too much in it. But it's even more complex than that, because you're telling it to generate content. It doesn't know what you want. It doesn't know what you mean. You have to literally tell it.
It doesn't know, because it's also not a person. Okay, so like let's get that out right away. It is a lot of logic. It's a lot of, but it is not a thinking, feeling person. And so at the end of the day too, we need to learn how to take what AI helps us, and then still, you and I have talked about this, Will, my hope also long-term in AI is that like at the end of the day, our humanness should become more valuable now than it was even before, because the remote route tasks that sometimes we get stuck with in our jobs can easily be undone by AI. But the thing AI can't do, and I still believe won't ever be able to do, is be human. Like there's a element of us as humans that is missing from any AI response we ever get, no matter how convincing and how much better it is at writing than some of my college students. It is still missing some of that human element. So our hope in the series is to show you how some people are trying to use it. We're going to be talking about how we don't believe AI is going to be replacing teachers, and we'll really dig into that, and then be talking a little bit about what Will and I are hoping for AI, and also some suggestions that we have moving forward and how to play around with it. And we'll be posting some stuff throughout this series on Twitter and LinkedIn, because those are the places. I'm sorry if you're on Instagram or the other places, like Will and I don't go there.
We're just not there.
My wife keeps telling me we should be on Instagram, and I was like, to do what? To like post a filtered picture of Will?
Do you want to see a here?
I don't know what you want from me.
Nobody.
Anyway, so follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn if you haven't. And we'll be posting stuff there as well to kind of give some more. We can't talk about everything AI in 5 episodes. So we'll be posting some stuff. We'll try.
We really just want to be able to, at the end of this, determine, if AI is Jedi, right, or if it's Sith. We just need to know.
Whoa, that was real red. Listener, if you're not on YouTube, first of all, we keep saying this. Come on over to YouTube. It's a solid,
Anchor does. Excuse me, Anchor's dead. Spotify does have video podcasts, so you could be on video podcasts.
Watch the video on Spotify.
Yeah, there you go.
The analytics are a little easier for me to find off of YouTube, so if you want to go to YouTube, though, that would be great.
YouTube's better.
So anyway,
I'm having too much fun with my fun lights this evening.
You did a little bit. Yes, is AI good or bad? We'll talk a little bit about that. And we will come to a definitive answer that will save your life. Anyway, that's the intro to AI. If you didn't know about that, I'm glad you're learning here. There's plenty more resources. Feel free to reach out to us. And check out the social media as we're posting. The social media. I sound like 80 years old. Check out our socials.
At least it wasn't me this time.
Yeah, whatever. To interact with us too. If you have questions or thoughts about AI, please interact with us. We love interacting with you guys as we're doing our episodes. To hear what you're saying and the cool stuff that you're seeing. We're not going to be able to grab everything. Will and I are not experts in these areas. We're just very interested. And we have a platform where some of you listen to us. So hence the episodes. With that said, though, it would not be a high-tech podcast episode if we did not talk about an app or a feature that you could use.
I forgot. Frankly, I got this far and I was like, I think we're just about to end the episode, aren't we?
Yeah,
I completely forgot.
No, we have an app.
Whatever could we talk about, Josh?
I don't know.
What app could possibly...
Another thing during this series we're going to do...
Do you have any notion about this?
I have some notions. The thing we're going to do is highlight AI tools, and we are not... So we're going to be highlighting ChatGPT pretty much the whole series. So none of our apps are ever going to be ChatGPT. It would be like... It would be like us today going, our app today is Zoom. Have you heard of it? So we are going to be focusing on other. We did that once. It was a while ago. It was acceptable back then. We're going to be highlighting other AI apps and tools that you may not be aware of. And this is where Will and I are sitting here thinking, man, we wish we hadn't talked about Research Rabbit before we started this series. Too bad.
But you can go back and listen to our episode.
It's
episode
true.
102.
102. Yes.
102 on Research Rabbit. There you go.
Yeah, we're on Research Rabbit. You can check that out if you're curious. That's another AI tool. Anyway, today we were making a joke about Notion because Will already referenced it at the beginning of the episode. If you don't know, Notion also has an AI tool. It's essentially ChatGPT. It's OpenAI. But they integrate it into their platform, which is what a lot of people are doing, right? You're seeing AI in a lot of different platforms. They're integrating OpenAI, but they're re-leveraging it and packaging it for their purposes. Like Will and I were just talking about. General ChatGPT, writing prompts, doing all that stuff. It can be difficult at times to come up with the right prompts to do stuff. And so what like tools like Notion is doing here in this case is integrating OpenAI so you can do some of that prompt writing and generative stuff, but then they're also pre-creating some prompts for you to help create content as well. So basically how this works is Notion AI is accessible inside the writing tools that you use inside Notion. So if you've heard about us talk about Notion before, which we've done on several episodes, so I'm not even going to list anything out. Notion
Our entire podcast.
Notion at its core is basically a database tool combined with kind of like Google Docs page writing, right? But like imagine that on steroids. Okay. So you can do a lot of stuff in there. Like I use it for personal management of things as well as notes and a whole bunch of other stuff. We use it to manage stuff for the podcast. I have friends who just use it as their note app. We use it to write courses before they get into LMSs. Like there's a whole bunch of ways you can use Notion. But now in Notion, I will admit most of our stuff we're going to be talking about during this series may not be completely free. Notion AI is not. It is an add-on. It does not cost much for what it does, but it is an add-on. If you get this add-on in Notion you can just hit / and do any things like add in bullets, format,
commands.
Like
you can
that.
give it a command after a slash.
That would be the formal word if you wanted to call it that.
I gotta have something to say on this.
Yeah, you have something. So you hit / AI and it gives you a whole bunch of prompts. So like for instance. I've now been leveraging it after any notes or meetings that I take. I just hit a little button that I've now set up on my notes that says summarize this meeting. And AI will summarize everything that's written out in my notes from that day into a little paragraph for me. And it's helpful because I can quickly pull information. If I'm like quick glancing at my notes, I can figure out what that note was about. It also helps for searching, a whole bunch of other stuff. But there's a lot of other stuff that Notion AI can do. It can help generate content for you in there. Like Will and I used it. We're not going to hide this. Will and I used it. So we talk about this on the podcast. We are starting a company called Harness Tech. And we needed to write a certificate of organization. Or no, that was what we signed. We needed to write a basically... Oh no, it was something there. It was basically our
operating agreement
contract.
of some sort.
Operation agreement. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So we needed to write an operating agreement. I don't know if you know this, but Will and I have never written an operating agreement ever.
Never. Not once.
Like I didn't even know what goes in it. So
didn't know you needed one.
Yeah. In the old world, I would have went to Google and looked up a few examples of an operating agreement.
And then had to wrote our own after that.
Yeah, copy and paste it and look at that. In the new world, I hit /AI in Notion and typed in, give me a template for a working agreement for two friends starting a company who like each other. And I hit enter. And AI gave me a working agreement with template places to put names in. Now, I didn't use it verbatim. I edited parts to work for our stuff, but I didn't write a contract from scratch. It generated it for me. Now, how good that contract is, I don't know. We'll see if Will and I ever sue each other down the road. But it helped. And I've been using that for a lot of other stuff, like just generating email templates that I want to use. And I go in and edit that and put in stuff like that. From an academic side of things, if you were using Notion, AI could be used. I know people have been using it to mess around with writing lesson plan templates. They don't write the lesson plan for them, but they generate a few things they want in the lesson template. Like just basically say, hey, I want a couple a place to put some intro questions. I want, some place to put some content. And they hit go, and AI will generate a template for them every time that they can input that information into and save a lot of time doing it. I think Justin even tested that with some of Notion features or some AI features. So, and Notion AI is now even integrated into databases now, where like you can tell it to summarize information in a record for you. So like if you have a database of information, you can tell it to real quick write an AI generated summary for each record automatically. So like think about some of this. Like you're probably sitting here thinking, going, listen, I just teach a course, or I work on course design, or whatever it may be. I don't know what I could use this for. Well, Will and I have talked about, for instance, that you could use Notion to create a course wiki, right? So like Notion works really well for this. So you can create a course wiki in Notion that can be shared with students that contains all the major information for your course, like terms, basic information that you want students to be able to find. We've talked about too, Notion could be used to create like a resource library for students that they could go find. Imagine having a column in there that has AI generated in it that automatically generates a brief summary for your students of each of those resources or elements in there to help them easily find it. Like that's what AI could do for you in Notion AI. So I've been using it for a while. I really like it. Everything from basic spell check to grammar check to just what I've been using a lot is I like to write a lot of words sometimes. And I've been using it to reduce. So there's a prompt in Notion that I can say, make shorter. And so it will make shorter. And I never use what AI gives me verbatim, but it does show me where I'm being extra wordy. And so like, I'll do that and be like, you know what? Okay. AI said what I said in 7 words in 2. It removed a whole bunch of the extra context at the end of the sentence that I need to make sure it gets back there, but I'm going to use that word to do that.
To help you shrink it up.
Yeah. Will and I even used it to name this episode.
Tonight, well, I helped with the prompts. Josh is the one using the magic fingers. I have yet to touch Notion AI, but that's just our strengths.
That's Well, and I was willing to pay for it. That's basically what ended up happening. That's what, So anyway, a lot of different uses for it, but Notion AI is a great tool. So if you're looking for an AI tool to integrate into a note system, I can't recommend Notion as that tool enough, and recommend what Notion AI has been doing. They've been adding more prompts, more features, things that you can't just do in ChatGPT, things that make it easier to do things quickly and generate content quickly without having to go over to ChatGPT, write it out, reformat stuff, think about things. Notion will format things for you, convert data for you. It's very
beautiful,
powerful. So that's Notion AI, one of the AI tools out there.
That's amazing. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for bringing us Notion, but Notion AI specifically.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could bring it to the world. Nobody knew who they were before me, clearly.
I'm pretty sure you're going to have like some IORads and some stuff put together like to help people get started if they're doing this. I'm thinking that's going to be a thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. If you guys don't know this, mainly because we haven't talked about it, this is just a short plug here. Will and I are now ambassadors for IORAD. That's our term, right? We got to get that right.
Yeah,
before we start saying things legal.
Yeah, we're ambassadors.
We're ambassadors. So we now have access to IORAD. If you don't know what IORAD is, go back and check out our episodes where we talked about it
on IORAD. I know our conversation with Sean and IORAD was episode 54. Other than episode 54 with Sean, I don't remember which other one we talked about IORAD.
I don't know. We've talked about it. I'm definitely not killing time while I try to find that other episode.
As he does a search in Notion, asking Notion AI, which episode was
Yes, it was episode 41 was when you and I first talked about IRAD.
41.
And then,
wow, that's so
we
long
had
ago.
Yeah, I know. And we had Sean on to talk about IRAD in episode 52. Real quick plug. IRAD is a basically a tutorial tool that will auto-generate kind of clickable tutorials for you. Very cool. We now have access to it and we'll be using it for the podcast. So be on the lookout for tutorials that'll show you to do stuff like what I'm talking about with Notion. I'm definitely going to be creating a bunch of Notion tutorials that can be shared with you. So anyway, next on the High Tech Podcast, we stop the opening AI series. No, I'm just joking. That'd be the worst series ever.
We're done.
And we're done. Okay, we're gonna go and talk about paper and pencil next week. No, next week on episode 106, we're going to be continuing our opening AI series with some guests. Will alluded to this, but My School AI is a software out there that is trying to make it easier for teachers and students to leverage AI to fill in the gaps. Really, I think the best way to describe what they're trying to do is fill in the gaps for how difficult it can be for teachers and students to kind of get custom learning in classrooms when you're trying to teach multiple people. They have some really cool ideas about how you can use AI to not remove the humanness of the teacher or the student, but actually be a tool for them to learn well and get what they need out of the learning content at the same time as interacting with each other. So it's pretty cool what they're trying to do. My School AI will be on next week, and we will be talking with them, and they have a ton of knowledge to share with us and a super cool sound booth. So there's little plugs if you want to check that out. So that's next week on episode 106 of the podcast. Just a reminder again, find us on Twitter, YouTube at High Tech Podcast. We should have corrected this, but is LinkedIn also at High Tech Podcast? Am I right?
I'll try not to say things I shouldn't say.
Will's fine. You can find us on Twitter and YouTube at least at High Tech Podcast. Please go subscribe, click the bell, whatever the things are. Go connect with us.
LinkedIn is linkedin.com/company/high-tech podcast, all one word, or you can go into LinkedIn and search high-tech podcast, all one word or two words, and you will get our company page. Yeah.
Either way, go follow us, connect with us there. We'd love to talk with you. You get updates about all the content and things.
Share us, please.
Yes, share us as well. So you can also email us at inbox@hightechpod.us or send a carrier pigeon to Will's house at... No, I'm just joking. Our website is also hightechpod.us. This is where we put all our cool episode pages with content information, as well as some of the tutorials that you may want to find that we will be releasing through IRAD. So you can check that out on our website. Okay, that is it. Thank you again for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to replace ourselves with robots. No, I'm just joking. To harness AI in the classroom, whether online or in person. See ya.